They should have just walked out. But bullies never know when they've stepped on a landmine until it's too damn late. Ever seen a storm wear a smile and roll in on wheels? No? You will. Because today, three loudmouths picked the wrong ghost to mock, and ghosts carry stories, some written in blood. The insults snapped through the smokestack diner like a whip, sharp, ugly, and soaked in arrogance. Three local wannabe toughs, draped in dusty biker cuts that hadn't seen real road grime in years, loomed near the doorway. One of them, the tallest with a face like a squashed beer can, gave a smug shove to the back of her wheelchair, not a hard push, just enough to knock her off balance and send her gliding into the edge of a booth. Plates clanged, forks flew, and a chipped mug spun into ceramic dust at her feet. She didn't scream, she didn't even blink, but the kid sitting by the window saw, and so did his father. Exactly 30 minutes later, a battered, sand-colored SUV pulled up to the curb, engine humming like a quiet threat. Three figures stepped out. Clean boots, tight postures, no smiles. The diner froze mid-bite, like a photograph taken just before a thunderclap. If you believe true respect isn't worn on sleeves but earned in silence, drop a comment with honor and subscribe for more stories where the quietest ones hit the loudest. Riley Vegas sat in her regular corner booth far back, near the broken jukebox that only played Elvis on rainy days. The smokestack was no five-star joint. The coffee could melt your tongue, and the vinyl seats stuck to your skin in summer. But she liked it. It didn't ask questions. It didn't judge. Predictable, small, steady, like the ritual that kept her head above water. A faded recon pin clung to the collar of her old work shirt. Her hands moved with the mechanical ease of someone who used to reload rifles in total blackout. Riley rolled napkins with military precision, the rhythm anchoring her. Wrap, tuck, repeat. Her manager only scheduled her for lunch rush's easy hours. She never asked for more. She didn't need to. Riley was 46. Former Marine gunnery sergeant. 2 tours in Kandahar. The second one left her with a mangled leg, a titanium rod, and a body that didn't forget explosions even when sleep tried to. She ditched the prosthetic years ago. Preferred the wheels. They didn't lie. Her fingers were scarred but graceful, moving like they were still decoding enemy signals through sand and sweat. Most of the regulars didn't bother her. Some nodded. Some couldn't meet her eyes. That was fine. She wasn't there to be seen. She was there to survive. To hold it all in place with napkin rolls and burnt toast. A weathered photo lived inside the pocket of her flannel coat. Her unit, before everything. Back when smiles came easy and trust wasn't a risk. She hadn't looked at it in years. But today it pressed against her ribs like a premonition. Because today, the quiet world she'd sewn back together with threadbare uniforms and bad diner coffee was about to split at the seams. The front door didn't open. It slammed, a thunderclap wrapped in wood. Ketchup bottles trembled on the counter. 3 men walked in, their boots making more noise than their bodies ever could. Denim, leather, patches that screamed for attention, Ox, Stitch, and Maverick. They were loud before they even spoke. Their laughter scratched the walls, the kind you couldn't laugh with, only at. Riley didn't look, but she felt it. A shift. Like something ancient had just turned over in its grave. Ox led the pack, shoulders like concrete, a neck redder than rage, and a grin that never reached his eyes. He clocked Riley within seconds. Well, he sneered, elbowing Stitch. Somebody wheel over from the scrapyard? Stitch chuckled, voice dripping sarcasm. Nah, man, that's G.I. Jane 2.0, probably rolling for sympathy tips. Riley didn't react. She didn't stop folding napkins. Fold, place, repeat. She'd heard worse in blown-out city streets. Heard screams layered beneath gunfire. Words were nothing. But here, in this place where people stared at their food and not the problem, insults carried a different weight, the weight of being left alone to drown. Maverick slid onto a stool, slammed the bell on the counter. Ding ding. Hey, what is this? A silent retreat, or do we get a menu? Riley wheeled over, back straight, voice calm like a sniper's breath. Would you gentlemen care for the lunch special? Her tone could cut steel. Ox leaned back in his stool. Sure thing, Private Pancake, he grinned. Roll it over nice and slow. His voice was too big for the room. Loud like he'd paid for every square inch. Wild they let folks like you serve food, Stitch added, chuckling. Ain't that some kinda hygiene violation? A couple across the room stirred, then froze like statues. The girl behind the register looked up, blinked, and went back to polishing an already shining napkin holder. Riley didn't reply. But the storm was already on its way. Place each menu like a drill move, Riley told herself. Knife, fork, napkin, exact, calm, unshaken. She didn't look at them. Didn't need to. The stink of mockery already filled the air. Don't they got mess halls for you back at the barracks? Ox muttered just loud enough for it to scrape across the walls. Riley rolled away, jaw tight. Behind her, someone snorted, probably Maverick, always the hyena of the pack. Stitch leaned back, arms stretching out like he owned the oxygen. Maybe she's teaching a master class, he said, grinning. Lesson 1. How to pretend you don't hear your betters. That was crack number 2. Riley could feel the pressure building like the tension before a controlled detonation. She moved to the coffee station, hands steady, reached for the pot with the same control she once used to disarm tripwires. Her chair bumped gently against the counter. Pour. Breathe. Focus. Behind her, the laughter rose again, thicker now, like oil on water. You know what I never got? Ox announced, his voice cutting through the room. Why the hell they started putting women on the front lines. Slows the whole unit down. Stitch piled on immediately, smug as ever. Bet she spent the war behind a desk, typing emails and pretending she heard bullets. Riley didn't turn. She didn't flinch, because what came next didn't need her permission. Maverick stood. Suddenly, the shift was like a cold snap. He walked toward her, slow, lurching, drunk on his own idiocy. Hey, Rust Bucket, he slurred. We're talking to you. She glanced back, not scared, just assessing. Maverick was big, sure, but not smart, not fast, not careful. The kind of threat that cracked its own knuckles just before losing. Then, without warning, he grabbed her wheelchair by the push handles. Riley's breath caught not in fear, but reflex. He yanked the chair hard. The front wheel clipped a table leg, and the tray in her lap went flying. Scalding coffee splashed across her sleeve. A fork clattered across the floor, and then came a sound she hadn't heard since Kandahar, her own body hitting the ground. She landed hard. Her right leg twisted awkwardly beneath her. The metal of her prosthetic bit into her hip with punishing force. Silence dropped over the diner like blackout curtains. A busboy froze halfway to the sink. The waitress behind the counter gasped, then vanished into pretend tasks. A couple by the window stared into their soup like it held answers. No one moved. No one spoke. Blade laughed a low, satisfied snarl. Ox chuckled. Stitch followed. It wasn't loud anymore. It was darker, cruel, final. Riley didn't cry. She didn't even blink. But the silence in that room felt like a second impact. She stayed down, palms pressed to the sticky floor, coffee soaked into her jeans. Her wallet had spilled open nearby. A single photo had slid free, her old team. Sand in their boots, rifles on their backs, smiles you didn't fake. On the back scrawled in faded black ink, "She carried us, every damn time." She moved, slowly. Not because she couldn't rise faster, but because speed wasn't what the moment needed. Her hands were precise, her face unreadable. She pressed down, pushed up, every inch earned. The laughter had dried up. The bikers leaned back now, trying to stretch themselves into kings of nothing. Ox muttered something about freeloaders and veterans getting handouts, but nobody was listening anymore, not even him. Riley reached for her chair, gripped it with both hands, flipped it upright like it was part of her body because it was. Then she climbed back in with the smooth, practiced grit of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Her clothes were soaked, her flannel hung heavy with hot coffee, her marine pin glistened like a fresh wound. A crumpled napkin brushed past her wheel. She didn't wipe it away, didn't wipe anything. She didn't need to. At the front window, a boy sat frozen, maybe 9, with wild eyes and a silent mouth. "Dad," he whispered, like someone trying not to break a spell. "Is that lady a soldier?" His father, an older man with a sun-faded cap and a jacket patched with threadbare insignias, looked up. campaign badges stitched into his sleeves. Fallujah, Mosul, 2nd Marine. His gaze locked on Riley, her steady hands, her clenched jaw, the coffee still dripping from her arm, and that photograph beside her on the floor. The one that said carried. He didn't answer immediately, he just looked. And then, with a voice like steel under velvet, he said, "Yeah, Tommy, she's a real one." The man stood up without fuss. Quiet, controlled. He walked past the bikers like they were chairs, out the door, onto the gravel. The sky had turned gold, as if the town itself was holding its breath. He pulled a phone from his jacket, dialed without looking. "Yeah," he said, voice calm. "This is Sergeant Daniels. I need to report something." Pause. "No, not official. Civilian grounds, but it concerns one of ours." Another pause. Longer. "You're going to want to send a team." Inside, Riley sat at her corner table again, adjusting her sleeve. Her fingers moved over her lap like she was brushing off lint. Or maybe ghosts. Maybe both. The fabric of Riley's shirt clung to her chest, coffee-stained and cold, but it pressed right over her heart, a reminder that whatever cracked inside her hadn't shattered. Not yet. She didn't know it, but wheels were already turning. Very specific wheels. 30 minutes passed. The bikers? Louder now. Looser. Relaxed in that smug, oblivious way of men who think the worst is behind them. Ox called for another refill with a lazy flick of his hand. Stitch spun a butter knife like it was a toy. Maverick leaned back so far in his chair, his boots planted on the table, his laughter barking again every time a customer dared to look his way and quickly look away. Riley didn't speak. She didn't roll napkins. She didn't move. She sat upright in her corner, hands folded like a soldier waiting for orders. The photo was back in her wallet, but the coffee stains hadn't dried. Neither had the silence. Then came the sound, not loud, but unmistakable. Tires on gravel. Not civilian tires. Heavier. Slower. Intentional. Outside, a matte green SUV crept to a stop. Dust spiraled around its wheels like it was being escorted by ghosts. On the side panel, the Marine Corps insignia glinted under the afternoon sun. It parked directly in front of the door, engine idling, silent but undeniable. Inside the smokestack diner, noise died like it'd been shot. The door swung open, not pushed, not nudged. Swung, precise, intentional. 3 figures stepped through, and they didn't bring words. They brought presence. The first, a master sergeant with a frame like a wall, gray hair cropped tight, and a polished cane that tapped once, then stilled. He scanned the room like he was back in a perimeter sweep. Every inch of him said, "I've led through fire." The second, a younger Marine, tall, squared, buzz-cut, pushing an empty wheelchair. Every move coordinated, measured, deliberate. The third, a woman, captain. Her uniform was clean enough to blind. Ribbons across her chest, combat medals catching the fluorescent light like sparks. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her walk alone froze the waitress mid-step. Even the tray she held leaned sideways, forgotten. The bikers? Goose dropped his knife like it had bitten him. Ox blinked, mouth half open. Maverick suddenly forgot how to lean. Riley didn't flinch. Not until the master sergeant stopped in front of her table. He stood tall, shoulders squared despite the limp, and offered a crisp salute, textbook sharp. "Gunnery Sergeant Vega," he said, voice forged in steel and gravel. "Forgive our delay." Riley's body moved before her thoughts caught up. She returned the salute clean, practiced, unshaken. And in that second, something sparked behind her eyes. Not fear, not pain. Recognition. Respect. The diner forgot how to breathe. The 3 Marines stood like monuments, uniforms stiff, boots untouched by the dirt outside. They didn't ask for silence. They brought it with them. The captain stepped forward, eyes locked on Riley. "We received a call," she said evenly. "Said a decorated Marine was publicly harassed on civilian ground." Her gaze turned, slow, surgical, and landed on Ox, then Stitch, then Maverick. Whatever laughter they'd stored vanished like air from a tire. Tank's jaw locked. Goose stared at the floor. Maverick shifted in his seat like it had grown spikes. And, the captain continued, tone still level, that physical assault was involved. Riley shook her head, almost whispering, "It's nothing." But her voice didn't carry. The master sergeant did. "With respect, gunnery sergeant, it is not nothing." He didn't say it loud. He said it clear, so everyone heard. "No one lays hands on one of ours. Not in battle. Not in peace. Not ever." The young Marine stepped forward. His eyes didn't move from the bikers. "Gunnery Sergeant Vega led our unit through Kandahar. She pulled 3 men out of a burning convoy. I was one of them." Riley looked up, blinking. Her voice cracked, just a little. "Private Kane?" "Corporal now, ma'am." He nodded. "Thanks to you." At the counter, a quiet sound. The boy, Tommy, rose from his seat, eyes wide, mouth firm. His father stood too, slow, proud. He gave her a quiet nod, not asking, not doubting, just knowing. Then, in the back corner, an old man with a faded Korean war cap stood. No words, just a clean, trembling salute. Next, a woman near the door. Then 2 National Guard members in plain clothes. One by one, chairs scraped the floor as the diner stood back straight, spines stiff, silence heavy with weight and honor. A formation built itself, not from orders, from instinct. Goose sank deeper into the booth like the walls were shrinking. Ox looked away, nowhere left to grin. Maverick didn't say a word. For once. And for the first time since they swaggered through that door, the bikers didn't own the room. Riley Vega did. And she hadn't raised her voice once. A week later, change announced itself not with noise, but with paint. The old dented sign once dangling above the greasy windows, the smokestack diner, was gone. In its place, a bold wooden board, freshly brushed in deep navy, read, "The Homefront Cafe, where respect is always on the menu." Inside, the changes didn't shout, but they didn't whisper either. The back wall now bore a tribute, a framed display of local veterans, rows of black and white photos, men and women, in dress blues and worn camo, faces set like stone against the backdrop of memory. Each image a small monument. Beneath them, service years, unit names, and one thing, they all shared eyes that faced forward. The booth where Ox, Stitch, and Maverick once lounged like kings, it remained untouched, not because it was blocked off, but because no one wanted to sit there anymore. That table now held the weight of memory. Riley Vega still came in every afternoon, still folded napkins with her usual unshakable rhythm. Only now, her Marine Corps pin wasn't hidden behind her collar. She wore it like armor. And taped to the back of her chair, fluttering faintly every time she rolled, a weathered American flag patch. Faded, proud, unapologetic. Customers stopped by her table more now. Some gave quiet thank yous. Some just nodded, their eyes lingering on the newly installed plaque above her booth, reserved for those who carried others. Underneath in silver, all gave some gave more. Even Dave, the manager who once stared at the floor instead of the fight, had changed. His shirts were pressed now. He wore a tie with a small flag pin clipped beneath the knot. That week, he hired 2 more veterans, one in the back line of the kitchen, the other working Saturday mornings behind the register. Melissa, the young waitress, had questions. Lots of them. Between orders, she asked Riley about stripes, ranks, who outranked whom, and how to tell a captain from a corporal. But more importantly, she learned what not to ask. Riley taught her gently, like a mentor passing on coded wisdom. And the Marines? They came back. Every Thursday, 1,800 sharp. Same SUV, same 3 faces. Sergeant Wilson, Captain Rodriguez, Corporal Kane. They sat with Riley like it was always meant to be that way. No speeches, no ceremony. Just black coffee, shared memory, and the weight of the world distributed evenly across 4 chairs. What began as a single flash of cruelty had reshaped a diner and reminded a town. Riley Vega was no longer a shadow in the corner. One Thursday evening, as the Montana sky blushed with sunset and dusk curled along the horizon, the door opened again. A new figure entered, young, barely shaving, stiff in a crisp army uniform. His cap was clutched tightly in both hands, his boots too clean, his eyes unsure. He stood like someone who didn't know if he was allowed to belong. Riley saw him instantly. She rolled forward without pause, her flag patch catching the gold light filtering through the diner windows. "First deployment?" she asked, voice low but certain. The kid nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Shipping out tomorrow morning." She pointed to the chair across from hers. "Sit. Coffee's hot. Company's hotter." He hesitated. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding," she said, a quiet smile curving at the edge of her mouth. "You're continuing the tradition." He sat. Across the table, Sergeant Wilson raised his mug not with a toast, but a gesture of kinship. Around the room, veterans followed. Some lifted mugs with hands that shook. Others raised them with the steady discipline of muscle memory. No words were spoken. None were needed. "You are seen. You are one of us. You never stand alone." Since that day, the town shifted. Invitations came. Riley was asked to speak at the high school assembly. She stood before a crowd of teens and told them what a uniform really meant. Not war, not glory, but discipline, purpose, carrying others when they can't walk alone. Shops started offering discounts unprompted. A local artist volunteered to design a memorial. Within a month, a black stone rose in the center of town square. Simple, unadorned, carved in silver. "To those who served with honor, and those who stood with them." As for Ox, Stitch, and Maverick, they never came back. Rumors swirled. One lost his job over the viral footage. Something about public conduct. Something about getting recognized in the worst way. Riley didn't ask. Didn't care. There were more important things now. Like the young woman who came in every Sunday, asking Riley about boot camp, her eyes bright, her grip on her cup nervous. Or the Vietnam vet who now wore his medals openly for the first time in 4 decades. Outside, the same green SUV sat waiting in the fading light. A note taped to its side window read, "We always come back for those who never quit." And inside, in the still hum of conversation, coffee, and camaraderie, Riley Vega sat surrounded by her people. Not alone, not invisible. Finally home. If you believe no veteran should ever stand alone, drop a respect in the comments and share this story.